Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi. It is Friday, June 30th, and today I come to you as we are seeing a Supreme Court that is increasingly committed to rolling back so many of the things that Gen Z cares about and values, from the right to an abortion to being able to pay off student loans. And it's up to all of us to pay attention to what this court is doing and, more importantly, vote in 2024. And today I'm so lucky to be joined by Sari Beth Rosenberg, who is a teacher in New York City, an activist, and a good friend. Sari, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me on today. It's been a pretty gloomy day with all the news, but I was looking forward to joining you to break it down.
I'm so glad to have you. And, like I mentioned, we're seeing a Supreme Court that is becoming kind of more shameless in its decisions. And some of the first people to suffer are students. And I know you're a teacher. How do you talk to your students about our institutions right now, especially given the fact that young people don't really trust these institutions as much as older generations?
Well, I provide them with the facts, and I provide them with an honest history, and I let them draw their own conclusions. And they trust me, and I don't sugarcoat things for them. And I don't sugarcoat things by just providing them with the facts.
Yeah.
However, I do try to empower them with the knowledge that their voting and activism and speaking out makes a big difference too. So I try to empower them, but also let them know the truth.
I can tell you that, that matters so much. I remember when I was in high school, having just a teacher, a government teacher, be the person who says, your voice matters is so important. But I'm wondering, kind of, what are the type of things you're hearing from students in the classroom? What are they telling you about kind of where we are right now politically and their feelings about this political moment?
So I'm in New York City, and I teach at a public high school, and the students tend to be more progressive than maybe students in other states. But I really do think that they are very similar for the most part to other people of their generation. And they see through the lies of all the institutions in America, that especially that are unfortunately the ones controlled by the Republicans. They see right through it, and they see through the hypocrisy, and they're very disappointed, but they're also activated. I have been teaching for 21 years, Victor, 21 years. And I wrote about this a couple years ago when I started seeing it. I've never seen a more activated, enthusiastic, and knowledgeable group of students. And I'm sure you see that as well. So they're disappointed. They're not surprised because they've been watching this for a while, but they have the facts and they have the motivation to try to change things.
I feel like there's this perception that, young people are like civically illiterate, that there's just a lack of civic education. That part is true, that, civic education isn't where we want it to be. But the question that I get asked more than ever before, especially in this moment, is how do adults talk to young people? And that's what I'm so curious about. You being a teacher, interacting with young people all the time, how do you resonate with kind of their concerns, with their values? If you were to just tell someone, an adult on the street who's wondering that, what would you say to them? And how do you kind of get young people to care about what we're kind of seeing right now?
So the hook for young people, but I think it's the hook for everyone, is to find because I teach American history, it's to find the throughways to present day. And also, here's the thing. Young people, and I don't have to tell you this, but I feel like I have to tell adults this who aren't in the classroom trying to pass laws banning history or banning the teaching of honest history. Young people, even in elementary school, can handle complexity.
Yeah.
In fact, we need to provide them with the critical thinking skills to help them not just see the complexity, but understand it and be empowered in seeing some of the hard truths in history and some of the hard realities today, but also helping them see the optimism through it as well, which is that there are change makers in America's history and our present day as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned the attacks on education across the country, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to have you on. But we had the Supreme Court news. But I want to get into that because I think everyone should be alarmed by it and disgusted by it. Anyone who has a parent, anyone who's a parent, anyone who has a child in school. It's so concerning. I know you're in New York City, so I hope you're relatively safe from the attacks on education that's coming from Republican states. But what do you make of what's happening in those states controlled by people like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, and the just deluge of attacks on education and the ability to learn and teach?
It is terrifying. And yes, I am so far unaffected by it. In fact, I'm so blessed to work in a school district in a city that encourages teaching the complexity of history and
Yeah.
trying to include the voices and histories of everyone in the in our classes, right? But I'm not um immune to feeling the effects of it, because as long as one teacher is getting attacked, our entire profession is getting attacked.
Right.
And right now, since January 2021, 44 states have some sort of bills or laws that are basically restricting the teaching of what they call critical race theory, which is,
Mm.
as we all know, it's just teaching the truth, teaching diversity,
Right.
and so what I'm hearing from, and I post and I think you were on that show. You were on that show at one point
Yes.
this
Yes.
year. And that was an amazing episode. People should watch it. PBS NewsHour Classroom, I host their Educator Voice series. And we have teachers on there from all across the country and from states like Florida and Tennessee that are already dealing with these laws. And teachers are terrified because right now they're having to choose between their principals and their paychecks.
Mm.
And that's not fair and that's not right, because it's educational malpractice, and they're being forced to commit educational malpractice in order to stay in the classroom. So it's no surprise that the retention rates are at an all-time low, rather, in the education field.
I mean, from the teachers, I've read so many articles recently that talks about, yes, the teacher retention rate is at an all-time low, and that they're struggling to find teachers in those states who are willing to go into the classroom and teach. And that makes sense because you have Republicans just attacking them at all cylinders. But give us a sense of those states and some of the teachers you've talked to in those states, and kind of how they feel about this, and kind of who are the people replacing them. Who are the people actually teaching children in those states now? Give us a sense of kind of what's going on down there and some of the conversations you've been having with your colleagues.
So what I'm hearing is that a lot of them don't want to leave, and they're doing everything they can do to stay
Yeah.
and teach the critical thinking skills that kids deserve to learn and be empowered with, while also not finding themselves, their names in the newspapers, or worse, like getting fired. And right now they feel like they're walking a delicate balance, because this is a dream job for many people. For most
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
this is a profession. This is not something that people did until it got too difficult and moved on to something else. So it's most teachers I know don't want to leave. Some teachers that I've spoken to who have gotten reprimanded are trying to make their way back in.
Hmm.
That's how passionate they are about it. But
Yeah.
I fear that who it's affecting the most are the young people
Yeah.
who might have gone to college, started off college 4 years ago, looking to be education majors, looking to teach K through 12. And right now they're looking at the landscape and saying, is it worth it? Is it
Yeah.
worth it to be in this environment where, I mean, I'm going to just use this language because I'm assaulted with it all day on my social media. I might not even be posting about this stuff, and I'm called a groomer and a pedo.
Wow. It's so
It's
sad.
disgusting.
It is so disgusting, so sad that this is. I mean, you mentioned most teachers want to go into this industry because they love it. It is a dream for so many people. They are the unsung heroes of democracy. They are educating students, and they don't deserve any of this. And I think it's helpful to kind of debunk some of the myths that people like Ron DeSantis are spewing. He's claiming that people are teaching wokeness and DEI, and they're teaching people to hate the color of their skin. Can you debunk some of those myths and actually give people a sense out there? What is being taught in classrooms? Is there any truth behind what they're saying? What is happening in those classrooms?
Thank you so much for asking that question, Victor. That is not happening. And they're just lies. And in fact, what they're basically, everything they accuse us of doing is what they're actually doing. If you look at their legislation, if you look at the laws they support, right? It seems to be that over and over again. But let me just answer you directly. You can look up the framework and the standards in every state. And the majority of the school, they're mostly, let's be honest, they are attacking public schools, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That is clear for the world to see. In New York State, we have a framework and we have standards we must teach, and then we have a state exam. And other states have similar type formulas. They might not have a New York State Regents exam, but they have certain content they must cover every year. And also, so that's how, so there's no time, even if a teacher whoever that might be, is looking to indoctrinate kids. There's no time for that. I can barely get, my students who might be watching this later, we barely got to the 2020 election. I mean, there's not we teach American history in a 1-year course, right? And if you're teaching ELA, you have a number of books and poems you want to teach.
Right.
And so it's just not happening. And also to address the whole issue of indoctrination, and this might sound glib, but I can't even get my students to turn in their classwork and homework on time. Even my best students, shout out to my best students, down to the wire at the end of the marking period. Every marking period, I'm getting late work. So if I could indoctrinate them to turn in work on time so they could get the best grade possible, I can't do that, right? So there's no way I'm indoctrinating them into whatever my beliefs are. And also, it's, what my biggest concern with that is, and you've really unleashed me right now, it's this idea that teaching is not a profession. We are professionals. We are professionals. We are trained professionals. And we did not get into this field to indoctrinate. We got into this field to educate. We love kids. We want them to learn and grow.
Yeah. And without teachers, I mean, we would not be seeing an informed citizenry. I mean, teachers are just so important. And I can't believe we have to say this in 2023 on June 30th, where, teachers are essential. And what we are seeing from Republican states is just disgusting and should not be happening. And you mentioned the curriculum and the fact that you aren't indoctrinating students. Have you heard from parents about curriculum or any sort of the things that Ron DeSantis is saying? And if so, how do you begin to respond to them and alleviate their concerns?
So I luckily teach in New York City, where the feedback I get from parents is my student, they're my student, they're their kids, right?
Yeah.
My child is the best the feedback I normally get is my child comes to the dinner table or comes to home and wants to talk about history, or they're more interested in following the news now. Or, that's the feedback I'm getting. And it's not because they're following the news because they've been indoctrinated to follow the news. They're starting to see it more interesting because I try to connect the past to the present, which every good history teacher does. It's what most of us do, right? And honestly, I think it's really important to get through the noise of all of this, because the messaging from the right, the messaging from Moms for Liberty, who are having their convention, if we want to call it that, this weekend in Philadelphia as we speak, with DeSantis and his wife, Ron DeSantis and his wife spoke today. I believe Trump is headline or at least speaking at some point. They are very loud. They've been labeled an extremist group for a reason. They have ties with the Proud Boys, even though they like to deny all that. They quoted, one of their chapters quoted Hitler, even though they had some strange excuse for it. They quoted Hitler. And they're loud and they're scary. So a lot of people are thinking, well, I guess most parents feel this way, but they don't. They don't represent the majority of parents in America. And I'm in conversations with a lot of groups right now that are doing a lot of work on the other side of things to support education, to support teaching of the truth. And to be honest, this is a youth rights issue, because when they're attacking teachers, they're attacking young people's right to learn fairly.
No, it's so true. And I guess maybe to close off this conversation, we're seeing these unprecedented attacks. How should teachers be responding to this, both in states like yours, New York, but also in the states where it's kind of most immediate? And also, how should young people be responding? What is kind of the way forward? How do we kind of take on that movement? Because like you said, they're loud, they're active, they're noisy, but there are more people on our side. But how do we activate those people to turn out and really kind of show that what they're doing is just not popular among the majority of the people?
So for one, my advice to teachers in states where their jobs are on the line, it's not fair of me to say, speak out.
Yeah.
But share with Victor, share with me, share with people who are loud online and are protected and who have a voice, who have a platform. We want to amplify your voices. So a lot of times I have teachers coming to me anonymously and they want me to share what's going on where they're teaching. So that's my one bit of advice. And honestly, the young people, we don't want to rely too much on you, but if you are in a state right now, and we see it happening in states like Florida, there was an amazing walkout that was just organizing, I believe, back in May.
Yes.
Young people, and this is not indoctrination, but if young people feel as though their right to learn a full and equal education to their peers in other states is being denied, you can speak out. And my advice to young people is, you might get frustrated with your teachers right now in a state like Florida, in a state like Texas. But keep in mind that right now teachers are trying to keep their jobs and do the best by you while also staying in the classroom. So I think we all need to work together. Teachers can do it in their own way to stay safe. And also parents out there are groups across the country that are organizing to, basically counteract what Moms for Liberty are doing. Look out for them. They're there. So, and I can help connect them if they'd like to.
So, I mean, maybe that's the last question: is resources for parents, resources for young people, resources for teachers. Point us in that direction.
Yeah, so there's one group, there's a couple groups on Facebook and Twitter right now. I think one of them is called like Our Schools, and
Oh,
there's another one I forget the name of it right now. They're like, so they're out of Florida, and they're like basically like Schools for Democracy. And I can connect. I'm sorry, I forgot the second one's exact name, but they're like, I believe it's Schools for Democracy, Our Schools USA. There's Save Our Schools out of Arizona. They are out there on TikTok. They're on Instagram. They're on Twitter. They are doing a lot of counteracting of the messaging, and I know that they're working really hard, going to school boards, speaking out, so that Moms for Liberty are not the only voices out there. So they're out there, and I can help if people want to connect with me on social media to connect them.
Yeah, and where can our audience find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Sari Beth Rose is my social media handle for everywhere. And I also have a Substack, and I'm basically saribethrosenberg.substack.com. And my newsletter is called Yo Miss, because that's what students call you
I
if you're
love.
female or female identifying in a New York City school. So I just
Oh,
own the name. Yeah.
I love that. Sari, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you truly for everything that you're doing. I wish we didn't have to have this conversation about attacks on teachers, but truly you are the front lines of democracy, and I'm so grateful to know you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Thank you. Well, that was such an enlightening conversation. Sari's so powerful, such an effective messenger, and this is one of the conversations that I've been looking forward to have, because it is, affecting anyone who is a parent, anyone who is a teacher, anyone who is a young person, their ability to gain access to just basic education. And none of us should stand for it. And just based off the conversations I've had with young people, it's just really disturbing. Young people are so sick and tired of this war on our education. No civilized democracy and no civilized society should there be bans on books. I mean, that is just absurd on every level. Should there be limits on what we can talk about in classrooms? Classrooms are a safe space. Teachers do their best, and they deserve nothing but our praise and respect. So thank you, Sari, for joining me today and talking about that. And as we all know, this week has been crazy. Today has been just a whirlwind of a day. This week has been a whirlwind of the day. Just to give you a recap, I mean, in the past day, we've seen the Supreme Court effectively strike down affirmative action. We've seen the Supreme Court say that any businesses can deny service to LGBTQ plus Americans on the basis of religion. We saw today's student loan decision. And I think if there's one thing that I'm grateful for right now, that I think everyone should be kind of, I guess, if there's any sort of silver lining behind all of this, I think there are two things. First, the response from young people, and just the backlash that we're seeing right now, this anger, this outrage, kind of what we saw last year, but also President Biden's response. And that response has been one of urgency. That response has been one of kind of immediacy. We've seen him really take action. His administration has been watching this very closely. They've come up with plans to respond in real time to what we're seeing. And it's making a difference. It's showing people across the country that this is an administration that, despite what the Supreme Court is doing, has our backs and is going to defend our rights and what we care about. And that matters. And I think that is what all of us should be watching right now. Is, the Supreme Court might be doing what it's doing, but we have an administration that is caring about us, that is still finding ways to make sure that we can just, access opportunities, that we can go to college, that we can, pay off student loans. And that really is important. And I think that really comes with age, that comes with experience, that comes as wisdom. And so just a moment of gratitude for this president. And I think young people are really paying attention to that. So thank you to President Biden. Thank you to this administration. We'll be back next week with another packed week of On the Move. I will be out on Tuesday, as I'm hoping everyone will be for the 4th of July, but I'll be back on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to talk about all the news of the day with, great guests at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, right here on youtube.com/Politicon, or on my Twitter page at VictorShe2020. So don't miss that, again, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, right here on youtube.com/Politicon, or on my Twitter page. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share it with anyone who might be interested in learning more about the news of the week with from a Gen Z perspective and with amazing guests. So thank you all for bearing with me this really chaotic and busy week, and thank you all for what you are doing. Stay in the fight. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.